Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. Dan, as always, it's an exciting transfer rumour episode. Before we get into these two big names, and I mean big names, how are you doing, mate?
Very good, mate. Very good. I'm excited for today. It seems like we've got two big players to talk about, which I always love doing. And I think it's one that we can. The winger situation needs a bit of clarity, doesn't it? So hopefully we can bring that, mate, because we haven't really nailed down a consistent either side really. And with Bertie going to the AFCON, we might need some help in that department. So it'll be good fun today.
Absolutely. But before we get into this, guys, we've got a word from today's video sponsor. Dan, have you ever wanted an app that collates all the scores and news from your favourite teams in the whole of Europe, Dan? Have you ever wanted that?
Is a constant need of mine, mate, because there's always news. That's the thing, is that we love this game. We love the industry of football because it's ever changing, mate, and you need a place to keep up with it all.
And we have that place exactly for you guys.
Do,
it's One Football. Guys, this app is genuinely, it's life-changing.
It's great because I use it. So it's great because it's where I pull the stats from for the podcast. So it's like there's all that new stuff as well, but you can track all of the players' stats from like across Europe for all the different leagues, for continental football as well. It's a dream. It's a dream. And the best part, mate, is it's free.
It's free, and guys, it would help support the channel massively if you check that One Football using the link in the description down below. We promise you guys won't be disappointed. So, yeah, if you guys haven't checked it out, make sure you check out One Football. It'll be the top link in the description. You'll be helping us out and yourself just generally consume better sports content. But, yeah, Dan, first of all, these guys have seen the title. There's no point in keeping them strung out for any longer. We'd be rude not to talk about it. PHILIPPE Coutinho. Now, I didn't really want to talk about this, Dan, because there wasn't any sort of solid rumours or sources. It was all just a lot of whispers. Barcelona need to get players off their wage bill to get people in. They've crippled themselves financially and are still somehow managing to sign players. But Coutinho is earning onwards of 300,000 euros a week and is just absolutely, he's stealing a living, essentially. He's stealing a living because he's not being played. He's not being used. He's had that loan to Bayern Munich where he's won the Champions League. Was involved in that famous demolition of the 8-2 against Barcelona as well, which was really just funny to watch. And now I'm only reporting this, Dan, because, the channel's doing terribly at the moment, guys. Where are you guys at? We need you guys turning up for transfer rumour season. Where are you? But as well, it was reported by Goal, so I can kind of vouch for that, that there is interest in Philippe Coutinho. Goal have also said that Liverpool and Everton are also interested. He isn't going to Everton. There is every possibility Danny finds himself in Liverpool, but obviously the links have probably emerged with it being, I think Steven Gerrard's come in to attract these star players, which is something we've talked about on the past few podcasts, Dan, about the pull of Steven Gerrard, obviously his former teammate, his former captain. So you can understand why there's links there. There's also Philippe Coutinho as an Adidas athlete. The Seth Sawiris owns the largest stake in Adidas. So people who think wages that may be a stumbling block, there's going to be workarounds. But it's one that we totally know isn't happening, Dan. But we're going to talk about it anyway because it's what a player Coutinho was, man, back in the day.
100%, man. It feels like a million years ago, doesn't it, that he broke Liverpool hearts with that big transfer to Barcelona. They all thought that was going to be the be all and end all. And it's incredible to think that was a deal worth up to £142 million. It seems forever ago. And it's pretty crazy to think, considering how much of a big deal that felt like at the time. Liverpool haven't really regretted that a bit. There's been no second thoughts on their part. They used that money very, very wisely to sign the likes of Virgil and Alisson, expert recruitment from Liverpool. And they've never really looked back. And for Coutinho, it's been a case of the grass isn't always greener. It's also pretty crazy to think he's made 106 appearances for Barcelona. Doesn't feel like, it feels like he's hardly been there, but, he's still made that century mark. And in that time, just 25 goals and 14 assists. He's sort of come back and managed to, in after you said that those loans and everything like that, managed to find himself back at the Nou Camp. for this season. He's made 16 appearances there, but it's never really felt like a match that suited either party, to be honest with you. And yeah, there are rumours that he earns up to almost £400,000 a week at the new camp, and Barcelona in their current financial situation, and it's a complicated one at that. But I'm sure they'd love almost £500,000 every week off their wage bill. So it's a transfer that suits all parties. The Liverpool links won't go away. I think it's a player that perhaps isn't a high profile signing as he once was. I think there is going to be a step. I don't think he'll go to Everton, as he says, because I think Everton have had enough of people associated with Liverpool coming to Everton. It hasn't really worked very well for them this season. So he's going to make a huge step down in terms of the club that he signs for. But it'd be really interesting to see where he lands, mate. And it's interesting that our name has been thrown into the hat.
I mean, Coutinho is almost everything that Aston Villa need. And it almost sounds silly to say that, because I don't think there's any team that is worse off for having Philippe Coutinho in their team. But I think more than anything, I think the Brentford game almost highlighted it, Dan, is sometimes you need a player that's got a bit something about him, a bit of skill, a bit of flair, a willing dribbler who's willing to try and break through the lines with the ball at his feet. Now, that's Coutinho's whole gambit, really, Dan. Averages over 10 progressive carries per 90. He's receiving over 5 progressive passes per game. He's attempted near 60 passes a game, just over 4 shots on average per game. As a player who is really looking to dictate a team, be the main man, that's Philippe Coutinho to a T. And it's almost a bit familiar to the kind of player who we lost in the summer, Dan. That's the first time I'll ever potentially reference that. I think Villa this season have missed something that Jack Grealish could offer against Brentford. We needed someone who can draw the defence out, someone who's confident on the ball, and with a stellar pass completion rate as well for Philippe Coutinho. It almost seems like of course it's never going to happen, but that's the thing that Villa are missing right now, isn't it, Dan? Especially from the wingers.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, mate. I think Coutinho is one that I think. Look, I don't necessarily think it's a point blank. There's no chance. I think this is as I said, he is going to have to come a tier down in terms of the club that he signs for. I think it'd be really interesting to see what the kind of fee is on this one. Liverpool, as you said, that's probably more possible than you might think. Liverpool are looking to offload Naby Keita and those kind of players. They are due help in the wide departments with Salah and Mane both going to the AFCON. So it's not as crazy as it might sound that Coutinho lands back in the Premier League. And obviously Liverpool is a link, but we, as you said, that Steven Gerrard factor that can't be underestimated. And it'll be interesting to see whether we see any more papers picking up on the story, and whether we see any other nudges that Villa are in the ring. But yeah, Coutinho is an interesting one, and I think out of the two guys that we're going to discuss today, he's one that I think you've really got to keep an eye on, because it does feel like there's still something left in that career, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%, mate. 100%. He's I think watching him, I didn't fully appreciate him at the time in the Premier League. I always felt like he was a bit of a long shot merchant. But it's only since you see the rapid decline since he's left, Dan, that you actually oh my God, this guy was some player. And he was integral for Liverpool, but as you say, mate, they've not looked back. They haven't needed to. But it would also make sense if he was to find his way back to Liverpool. But I think we'll see. He's definitely one to keep an eye out. I'm sure he'll be on the move sooner rather than later. But Dan, another just really exciting player that we've been linked with, Dan, from Juventus, Dejan Kulusevski. If I've pronounced that wrong, please correct me in the comments. It's a tough one, but Dan, we're talking big names here, Dan. There's some big names being linked now. I know after we did the Zakaria Rumour Mill podcast, all of a sudden links came out for Manchester United, and I expect the same with Kulusevski, to be honest, Dan. He is a player of that pedigree who can go on and play at a top club in any of Europe's top 5 leagues. But I mean, this is a really exciting link, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah, he's such a unique player. I always love watching Kulusevski, because he's such a rare type. He's this quite tall, he easily clears 6 foot winger that sort of is rumbles down the wing. He's such a powerful runner, and you don't see too many players of that ilk nowadays. You think of the modern winger being as quite small and fleet-footed, nimble and fast, and Kulusevski is not quite a throwback, but yeah, just a real unicorn in terms of the talents that he presents. And I think when you look at the situation at Juve, it's a very difficult one at the club right now, and it's clear that they need major changes at the club to turn the tide. He's a player that could well see himself on the way out, because they need players who have the experience, and they need players who can get the club back into the Champions League and back challenging for the title. And unfortunately for Kulusevski, I think just that lack of experience and the fact that you can't bet the bank on him, and that's what Juve need right now, and that's what Ronaldo was, a player that they could rely on. They don't have that right now, and to make way, we've seen reportedly that they're looking to move on Morata. Kulusevski could get caught up in that as well.
Absolutely, and I think it's certainly one where I think Juventus have speculated to accumulate with him. He's come from Atalanta. He's had a few loans at Parma. Both whilst being an Atalanta player and a Juventus player. And it almost feels, the big clubs often tend to hoover up these young talents, and if they make it, they do, and if they don't, then you just have to look at an Adnan Januzaj type. Player. He's having an all right time at Sociedad, I guess, but no, Kulusevski, he's a really exciting player, and I think to be a part of Gasperini's Atalanta, not playing too many games, but being in and around the club should first of all just tell you about the kind of player he is. You guys will have seen Atalanta if you've been taking note of the Champions League over the past few years. An absolutely wonderful football inside. Probably, I think for the past sort of 7 years, maybe, Dan, I think everyone's sort of European club that they've had a soft spot for has been Borussia Dortmund. Reaching that Champions League final in 2013, having wonderful players like Marco Reus, Aubameyang over the years. The recruitment's been fantastic, but I think now that sort of European hipster side is becoming Atalanta, because what they've achieved is remarkable, and it's shown in Kulusevski's stats in the performances over the past year. He's averaging just over 23 pressures per 90. He's within the top 25 percentile for assists per 90, which is impressive. 7 touches on average in the attacking penalty box per 90. And again, he's receiving around 9 progressive passes per game, which it tells you all you need to know. He's a player who likes to defend on the front foot, which I think is really important for Steven Gerrard's system, Dan, and is going to be active in that final third. And again, as I said, Juventus, it was one to speculate, to accumulate. I feel like that's probably the same situation because, as you've alluded to there, Dan, we haven't really seen him fully take that step up just yet. But I think a transfer to Villa would be the perfect situation for Kulusevski to really establish himself as a sort of household name, not that kind of player who you see once every sort of 2 months in the Champions League and go, he's all right. He's certainly not wanting a sort of what-if moment himself either, Dan. So, leaving Juventus, which will always be tough because they're a fantastic club, I'd imagine he has it pretty cushy there. But, to come and play in the Premier League is a genuinely exciting opportunity for him.
Yeah, and there are the links all over Europe that reflects just kind of what a talent that he is. Tottenham, Arsenal, Sevilla. There's a couple of clubs in Italy as well, Genoa being one that supposedly want this guy. And it's not like he's Coutinho feels like a real player that's been frozen out, but that isn't necessarily the feeling. He has made 21 appearances for Juventus this season. So, he's not a bit part guy, but he's only been on their starting 11 in 4 occasions. And so it just shows that Juve are struggling to really rely on him. And he's 21 years old. He's at such a key moment in his career where, you leave a side like Atalanta and you had those loans to Parma where he was a real rock for those sides, someone that they really relied on. And he just hasn't managed to prove to different managers at Juve that he's the guy. Pirlo was really quite keen on him. He said some really nice things when he was manager, called him a champion and credited the mentality that Dejan has. And I think that mentality is very useful to any team, Villa being one. And I think, he's made 68 appearances for Juve across all competitions. He's got 18 goal contributions to show for it. So he's shown that he can be relied on in an attacking sense. And most of those appearances are substitute ones. So he's shown that he can be relied on. He's worked in some very high profile front threes with the likes of Ronaldo and Dybala. So he's used to playing at the top level. It's just a shame that Juve haven't quite found the ability to rely on him like I'm sure he'd want to. So I'm sure with the right money, he could be sold. And wage-wise, he'd cost a lot less than the likes of Coutinho.
For sure, man. I think it's a case of he can see himself being the main man somewhere else, which I think is a responsibility that some players need. And I think, you know, with someone like Kulusevski, he himself will want to feel like he can be depended on. And if he isn't feeling like that at Juventus, it totally makes sense. Now, there's no sort of fees that are being bandied about, but a player of this caliber could cost you anywhere around the sort of £30 million mark, which again, some people might say is a lot, but I think sometimes people forget we haven't spent a lot of money, like specifically on players. Like people talk about Trezeguet and Traore. You know, some people even said on one of the last podcasts that these players are championship quality. Well, you're paying almost championship fees for them. You know, we've not really paid more than £15 million for a winger, have we? So it's a position where I can see Villa investing heavily in one player, whether it is Coutinho, seems unlikely, or Kulusevski. I mean, it's probably the more likely of the two. That jury is you know still out, but I think ultimately, Dan, it's another exciting player that we're linked with, and it's definitely one that Villa fans can get excited about. And guys, as always, if there is any more links, you can know that Dan and I will be on it. We're going to be smashing out the videos in January for the transfer rumour mill for you guys, because we know you guys like to be informed. So yeah, if you enjoy this, make sure you hit a like, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe for more. Up the Villa.